Today we're going to look at box and whisker plots. Let's review how to draw those. So if I'm given a set of data, I need to find the median. And remember, to find the median, you need to put your data points in order, least to greatest. So once I have that done, then I look for my middle number. So my median would be 8. And then I'm going to look at the bottom half of the data. So we found the median that splits the data in half. And then I'm going to find the middle of this lower half. So that would be 2. We call that quartile 1 or just Q1. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the upper half. So I'm going to take the upper half of data, 10, 15, and 18. I'm going to find the middle, which would be 15. That is quartile 3. And then the last step would be to find the minimum value and the maximum value. So that's my lowest and highest number. So that is 18 and 0. Those 5 numbers that I circled are going to be the 5 numbers that I put on a number line and draw my box and whisker plot from there. I am going to use a website to draw this. They are, I have several links on my eClass page, and there's at the very, very bottom, you can click on one of these links and it will draw the box and whisker plot for you. So I just slide the numbers. So my max is 18. First quartile was 2. Median is 8. And the quartile 3 is 15. Okay, so here is my box and whisker plot. The number line, the numbers get off a little bit. So this right here, the middle is 8. Doesn't look like it, but it is. So you can see that this type of diagram is going to divide your data into 4 sections. So from the end of the whisker to one side of the box is one section, and then we have a second section, the third section, and then a fourth section. So I'm dividing it into 4s. So that means that each of these sections represents 25% of the data. And you need to know that because they may say in a question like 75% of the data was above what number? And so you would have to look and see, okay, where's 75% of the data was above what number? Or they may say the middle 50% or the lower 25% of the data, and you'll have different questions about that. Looking at this box and whisker plot, this one is pretty symmetrical. I would not have an outlier here. If I did, I would see a very long whisker on one side, but I don't have that. This one's very symmetrical. That means the data is laid out pretty evenly. There's nothing that's really high or really low. Okay, let's look at another set that may have an outlier. Okay, so I'm going to have a low 0, but then everything else is above 11. Okay, so I would find my median would be 14. My Q1 would be 11. My Q3 would be 17. My max is 19, and then my minimum value is 0. So let's see what that looks like on that little animation thing, and see if that 0 looks like an outlier. Okay, so here's what that looks like. So you can see my box got smaller. So from Q1 to Q3, that box got smaller. And if you look at my data, my data is closer together. And then you have that big long whisker out to the side for 0. So looks like 0 would be an outlier. So there is an actual way to calculate that. You don't have to worry about that in 7th grade, but that looks to me to be an outlier in this set of data. Okay, let's look at your note sheet for today. So we have, it's called Measures of Variability. It has the box and whisker plot at the very top. The first thing to look at is the diagram of the box and whisker plot. Of course, we know the whiskers are out to the side. The box in the middle is Q1 and Q3. If I were to actually calculate the length of that box, that is called the interquartile range. So that's from one side of the box to the other. Now you have to be careful because they could ask for just the range, and the range would be from the maximum to the min. Okay, so there's a difference between the range and the IQR, the interquartile range. Okay, so range is going to be max minus the min, and then IQR is going to be Q3 minus Q1. So I would make a note out to the side about that. Okay, let's look at the blanks underneath that. So parts of a box and whisker plot. Quartiles divide a data set into 4 equal parts. The first quartile is going to be the median of the lower half of the data. Third bullet, the median or quartile 2 divides the data into 2 halves. The third quartile is the median of the upper half of the data. And then the last bullet, the interquartile range is from the first quartile to the third quartile. It's the box. Now, what we'll be looking at the most will be a double box and whisker plot. So we'll be comparing 2 or more sets of data to each other. So let's look at these questions and do those together. So under or towards the top, it says each quartile represents 1/4 of the data. Fill in that blank. Okay, so number 1, what percentage of period 2 scores are lower than 76? So period 2 is the second one. We're going to look and see, okay, the number line's going up by 2s. So the 76 would be right here. So that is right there at the median. So they want to know how much of the data is right here. Well, that median sliced my data in half. So those 2 sections mean that that is 50% of the data. Number 2, what is the value of the first quartile for period 1? So period 1 is here. First quartile would be the end of the box. And so if you go straight down, that looks to be 68. What is the difference in the maximum values of both periods? So maximum value would be here for period 2, and then looks a little bit over 100. We'll just say it's 100. So we got 94 and 100. So subtract 100 minus 94, and you would get the difference is 6. Okay, which period has a higher median? So here's the median for period 2. Here it is for period 1. So this one is higher, so period 1. Number 5, what percentage of period 2 scores are between 64 and 94? So 64 would be here, and then 94 would be here. So that's all of the data. So that would be 100% of the data. Number 6, what is the range of the scores for both periods? So in the previous question, we were technically looking at the range. It was from each side of the box and whisker plot. So that was 94 to 64. So that would be 30. So period 2 is 30. And then period 1, I'll put it over here, is from about 100 to 60. The 6 got cut off in the picture. So 60, so that would be 40. Number 7, what percentage of period 2 scores are between 68 and 100? So here is 68. 100 would be here. So that would be 3 sections. So we got 25% of the data, 25%, and 25% of the data here. So that is 75%. Which period has a smaller interquartile range? So that's going to be one side of the box to the other. So you can see with this one that this box is smaller than this one. So I don't even have to calculate. I can just look at the size of the boxes. So the one with the smaller one would be period 2. Number 9, which period performed more consistently? How do you know? So when we are looking at box and whisker plots and we're looking to see if something is more consistent, we're looking for data that is closer together. So if it is more consistent, then the box and whisker plots, everything is going to be closer together. If something is less consistent, then it is going to be further apart. So that means that period 2 is going to be more consistent, because if you look at the box and whisker plot, it is closer together, it's tighter together, it's not as spread out. So period 2 would be more consistent. So now you're going to look at your class kick and you'll answer some questions very similar to this about other box and whisker plots.